All right. Well, it is 3:04, and I know that we've got our presenter here. So let's go ahead and get started. And I want to remind everyone that according to the procedure for Robert's Rules of Order for holding a regular monthly meeting, in absence of a chair or secretary and or when a quorum is doubtful, is as follows. Any member may call the meeting to order at the appropriate time. If somebody would like to do that now, I will continue with the instructions afterwards.
I will happily call this meeting to order.
I will happily second it.
Yeah. Okay, we've done our part, John. Back to happy hour.
Okay.
Thank you, Simmons and Eldridge. Meeting called to order at 3:05. And now that that has been motioned and seconded, is everyone in favor? Please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
No, nobody's opposed. Kidding me?
All right, motion passes. Okay, so the member who called the meeting to order will preside, Simmons, while members present elect a chair pro tempore to preside for this meeting. No quorum is required to elect a chair pro tempore. Would anyone like to volunteer for that spot today?
What are you needing for today? A chairperson
Well,
for the day?
we're going to need a chair and then we're going to need a secretary.
I don't have the legs to be a secretary. Or the hands. I'll take the chair seat. I don't know what the hell you want out of me, but I'll move one out of the way. Who wants to be the secretary?
Okay, so Simmons, I heard you volunteer to be the chair. And then Ziegler, were you the one who said secretary or was it Brooks?
Yeah.
Ziegler. Okay, wonderful. So for chair, Simmons has volunteered and I would like to go ahead and take a vote on that. So all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. Ziegler has volunteered to be secretary pro tempore. All members present, please say aye if you agree with this.
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Aye.
anyone opposed? All right. Okay, so Simmons, as our chair, pro tempore, you must determine whether a quorum is present before proceeding farther, which we will do in a moment when you call on me for roll call. If a quorum is present, then the meeting continues according to the agenda with yourself presiding. If a quorum is not present, then the next step is for a member to make either a motion to adjourn, or if it is thought that absent members might be on their way, a motion to recess. If the quorum requirement Codi chose through its bylaws is not met, then that does mean that Codi cannot conduct business. However, after adjourning the meeting for a lack of quorum, the members present may go forward with scheduled presentations, discussions, and announcements without unnecessary parliamentary formality. That's a mouthful. So Joel, if you would like to call on me to do roll call.
Hey, Misha, would you mind calling roll, please? So we can
I would love
determine
to,
the
Simmons.
presence
Thank you
of the
for
quorum.
asking. Hillary Brooks.
Here.
Thank you. Jackson Kane. John Eldridge.
Here.
Thank you. Aquila Maxwell. Maddie Matheson. Kanya Mall. Joel Simmons.
Here.
Thank you.
That's
Stacey
Chairman Joel Simmons.
Stacy Spangler
Very good.
had previously reported that she would be absent today. And Lauren Ziegler.
Here.
Thank you so much. Quorum right now is 6 of 9 members, and we only have 5 present, which means that we do not have quorum.
All right,
Is anybody around that didn't speak and couldn't be heard?
As far as Cody members, no.
Yeah, I'm just curious. When you called out, I was wondering if somebody there are other gestures they can do. I was curious.
okay, so we haven't met a quorum, so we can't do any official business. What can we do again?
We can make a motion to adjourn, get a second of that, vote on it. Once we officially adjourn, then we can hold the meeting and we can do presentations, discussions, announcements, etc. We just can't take care of any business, anything that needs to be voted on.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, so I hear a motion by Eldridge and a second by Simmons. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I saw some hands raised. Anyone opposed? All right, motion to adjourn at 3:11 has passed. Thank you all so much. Because we do not have quorum, we cannot approve September or October minutes. We will try to approve those both next month, and I will once again send them all when I send the November minutes to you. And Joel, do you have your agenda pulled up so that you know who to introduce, or would you like me to do that?
I'm gonna turn that over to you.
All
I'm
right.
real big at passing the buck.
Well, I am extraordinarily excited to have Mr. Adam Curitan from the University of Tennessee back with us today. I know that you all probably remember him. He presented to us in June of 23, I do believe, and it was a great discussion that we had. And I recently had the pleasure of seeing him at the KAEC breakfast and thought that we could definitely benefit from having him here again. So with that said, I will turn it over to Mr. Curitan.
Great, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you having me. Although I'll admit that I got a little worried when you all adjourned the meeting. I thought my screen would just go black, and like, hey, thanks for coming, buddy. Is there any way I can share my screen?
You most certainly can share your screen.
Okay, let's see if I can make this work here. Okay. Okay. And I'm gonna put in if I can find it, there we go. The chat. Okay. So I'm Adam Curitan. I'm a Lindsay Young Professor of Philosophy here at UT. And I'm a philosopher of disability. And so some of you might think, what the heck is that? And it is true that, you can put philosophy in front of anything and, it can still make sense, kind of. But I think disability really is an important issue for, that raises all kinds of interesting philosophical and especially ethical issues. So I think about, very big abstract things like what is the nature of disability? What it's like to live with a disability. I'm legally blind myself. And also sort of ethical issues of how we should be treating disabled people, both in everyday life and also, in with our institutions and political arrangements.
Okay.
So what I thought I'd do today is tell you a little bit about a current research project that I'm working on, and just give you a little summary of the kinds of at least issues that I think are interesting, and I hope for this group will be interesting, especially in light of the wonderful breakfast that I attended recently. So can everyone see my screen? Any problems? Okay, good. And I put in the chat a link to an accessible version, and there's also a QR code on the screen if you want that. So what I want to talk about, let's go back, is look, a reoccurring problem that I myself have experienced and that many disabled people I know have experienced. It's a very special problem, and it's a really weird one when you think about it. Namely, whether to disclose our disabilities to employers or to future employers. So I faced this question when I was applying for jobs, both early in life and later in my career. And to be honest with you, it's the most common question I get from disabled students at UT. Where they would pull me aside and say, hey, I've got this disability. Do you think that I should mention it on my application? Do you think I should get accommodations for my application or when I get a job? And that's always sort of saddened me and depressed me, but also puzzled me. So that's part of what I want to talk about today. And I talked to Misha, I plan on only talking for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have questions, and then you all can move on with your meeting or pseudo meeting, I guess, at this point. So disability, as many of you probably know, was for a long time regarded as simply the inability to work. So there's always been this close connection between disability and work. So this goes all the way back to the English Poor Laws. It goes back to the ways that disabled veterans were treated when they would return from wars. And it even persists in little pockets to this day in, say, the Social Security Administration and various insurance companies, say workers' compensation. Now, it's really depressing how and sort of staggering the numbers with regard to disability employment. So about 80% of disabled people, according to at least some surveys, are not in the labor force, are either not employed or underemployed or not seeking employment at all. Whereas and only 19% of disabled people are employed. And those are the lowest numbers across any group you can mostly think of. Now, this issue of disability employment is incredibly complex. There's many facets to it, involving training, involving legal issues, but I also think that there are some underlying attitudinal issues, especially on the part of employers. The ways that they tend to think and regard people with disabilities that are among the most significant obstacles that disabled people face in the job market. And I think many of these obstacles are made especially vivid when we consider what might be the relatively simple question of whether to disclose a disability to an employer. So I've got some numbers on this. It's so weird. Only about 40% of disabled people who work disclose their disabilities to their managers, and it goes down. Only about 20% disclose them to human resources. So what I want to do is talk a bit about why this might be, to try to explain it, to try to put our finger on it, and then to do some ethical evaluation to see what morally is sort of right or wrong in the ways that employers tend to think about disabled people, and also, let's face it, in the ways that some disabled people sometimes think about ourselves. So we're well aware of what it is to disclose a disability for purposes of employment. So it's to officially notify your employer that you have a disability and that in the process of requesting workplace accommodations for your disability. And these accommodations can be of many kinds. They can be adjustments to schedules like flexible work times or working from home, changes to policies, say absentee policies, time off for training, say for training guide dogs, services, environmental changes like accessible restrooms, equipment like I mean, you all would not believe the size of the computer monitor that you all are on right now. I mean, UT, like UT treated me right. I've got like this massive computer monitor. So, good on them. So things like that, sign language interpreters and so on. Now, for some people, it might just seem totally unbelievable that people with disabilities could manage to both have a job, keep a job, and not disclose their disabilities. Like how could that be? But the numbers I showed you suggest that it happens, and it's really, when you think about it, not too surprising. Look, it's true, some people might have a disability and it might be obvious, but they, for various reasons, just don't officially notify their employer about this. They don't seek accommodations, or maybe if they do, they request ones that are, much less onerous than they actually are entitled to. And I'm just here to tell you that especially people with hidden disabilities, we can come up with all kinds of unique adaptive strategies to get along well enough if we really wanted to keep our disability from our employers. Now, the advantages to disclosing a disability at work are obvious. When we have the workplace accommodations we need, this enhances our productivity. It helps improve job security, leads to raises. I mean, we do our jobs better when we have the accommodations that we need. And in fact, accommodations often make it possible for some of us to work at all. On the other side, of course, not fully disclosing your disability puts many disabled people, and I know many of them, at risk of being terminated, of getting poor performance reviews, of being passed over or shunted into less desirable jobs. So when you put it like this, it's like, well, gosh, why wouldn't, if you have a disability, just be open, honest, tell your employer so you can get the accommodations that you need. Yet many people with disabilities don't do that. And I think the reason is that they fear being discriminated against. Now, of course, we've got the Americans with Disabilities Act, and that's supposed to protect us from discrimination on the basis of disability. But we all know that when there's a will, there's a way, that employers very often can get around the law, make use of exceptions and loopholes, tell some, cockamamie story about why they fired somebody or didn't promote them. Disabled people know this. We know that this is something that we're always subject to. But that then raises the further question, well, why then do employers discriminate? And of course, there's many reasons for this. But discrimination does not occur in a vacuum. It doesn't just happen. So it's worth reflecting on, like, what's going on in the minds of many employers who take steps to avoid hiring disabled people, who pass them over for promotions, who give them bad performance reviews, who make it tough for them to get the accommodations. Like, what's going on in their minds? Why are they discriminating in ways that are common? And not just why, but I think we should also try to evaluate morally these underlying attitudes. Because it seems to me that maybe that's a good first step to diminishing disability discrimination, is trying to give some moral arguments to employers. Not just arguments that are based on what's going to make you money, but arguments that are based on trying to be a good person. These are the kinds of things that maybe you should be doing. So that's the kind of approach that I'm thinking of here. So I want to talk about three kinds of reasons, three kinds of attitudes that might be motivating employers to discriminate against disabled people. And on the flip side, attitudes that disabled people worry about, and so lead us to not sometimes disclose our disabilities, to try to fly under the radar screen. Well, one reason is that there is a long history of non-disabled people, and especially employers, thinking of potential employees with disabilities as a kind of hassle. That like even otherwise good people, people who care about justice, people who care about being a good citizen, nonetheless think, gosh, I just don't want to take on the extra responsibility that comes from having a disabled worker. So it's true, when you hire someone with a disability, some new responsibilities fall on your shoulders. There are now additional things you morally and legally have to do. You have to provide the person, especially with accommodations that she needs. Employers might worry, though, that this might become onerous, that uh, especially in the long term. Employers might also worry that it's tough to know exactly what accommodations a disabled person is entitled to. Like they may think, look, I don't want to get into this morass of what a reasonable accommodation is. I just rather avoid this whole situation to begin with. Now, this hassle that I'm talking about, in scare quotes, is, I think, certainly in part practical. Like, employers think, I don't want to get sued. I don't want the person to get mad at me when I'm not doing, in their mind, the right thing. I don't want to have to go through these adversarial meetings where the person is demanding things that I don't have the money to get them. So, sure, I think that's part of the issue. But I also think there's a moral part of the issue here that people think, I'm not sure that just morally I want to take on these extra obligations. So I'm kind of thinking that it's kind of like why you sometimes might not want to watch somebody's kid or dog. You're like, look, I could do it and it's fine, but like, do I really want to take that on? Because man, I might mess up. I might do something wrong. And this seems to put me in a sort of precarious situation where like I might like do some wrong things. I might be negligent. I might open myself up to moral blame and criticism. It seems to me that this whole idea of regarding disabled people as a hassle is a failure to fully respect disabled people in the ways that we morally should. So I think everyone deserves equal respect, including those with disabilities. And I mean, respect, of course, is a squishy term, but part of it, we can get more specific with it by thinking about respect in terms of respecting someone's rights. So disabled people have rights to accommodations. And so do you really respect somebody if you try to avoid having to fulfill their rights? Like if one of your employers demands a fair wage, it seems entirely disrespectful for you to totally dismiss them or to fire them. Because after all, we all have a right to a fair wage, to being treated fairly. And I think disability accommodations are an extension of that. So what I'm thinking here is that this might at least be a kind of moral appeal to employers. Yeah, you might get sued, but this is part of being a just, respectful person to uphold and try to do your part to respect the rights of those with disabilities. And the way you do that is by providing us the accommodations that we need. I think if disabled people knew that employers had this attitude, if they weren't always looking at us as a hassle, I think many of us would be more likely to disclose our disabilities. We would, in turn, be better workers, which would then, of course, make employers even less regarding us as a hassle. So that's my first thought, is about sort of the hassles of having disabled employees. My second thought has to do with a sort of common stereotype that many disabled people face, which is that we are burdensome, that we are not pulling our weight, that we are taking resources away from other people. And of course, this is understandable because for many of us do feel like we're in this position, that we depend on our families and friends, that, I read somewhere that the average cost to society for a blind person per year is $17,000. So The thought then is that disabled people are not only burdensome, but that we are sort of whining and complaining and not pulling our weight. But I think that's totally wrong. You can see how that might lead employers to think, look, I don't want to hire a disabled person because they're just not going to do as good of a job. They're not going to contribute to my organization as much as other people. But I think that this attitude is also disrespectful because it's misguided. Most every disabled person wants to contribute to our organization and to society. We want to do our part. We want to pull our own weight and to make a difference. And I think, sad to say, many of us worry that taking workplace accommodations sometimes ends up making us at least perceived as less useful. Why? Well, look, because we worry the accommodations. I mean, I've done this before at UT, like, gosh, this money they spent on this large screen monitor, maybe that could go to scholarships or be used in a better way. Maybe it's not worth it for them to spend this extra money on me. What often we want to do is to both rattle disabled people out of that way of thinking, to say, no, giving you these accommodations is actually going to make you more useful to the organization. And we want to shake employers out of this attitude, this mindset, because it's just true that giving disabled people accommodations is itself often good for business. But beyond that, I think there's an even deeper point here. In addition to whether disabled employees are economically beneficial or not, economists can argue about that. I think we've got a moral obligation to give people, everyone, including those with disabilities, an opportunity to be useful. Many of us do feel burdensome. Many of us are not allowed to do much in the way of helping other people, contributing, cooperating. I think it's part of our responsibility as a society to give disabled people a chance to chip in, to do our part. And obviously, employment is an important way to do that. Finally, I want to think about fairness and the appearance of fairness. So I know I sometimes have worried that whether the accommodations that I receive are themselves really fair, or am I getting unfair special treatment? So when I get additional time off, or when I get special, a special office, a bigger office so I can have all my equipment in it, I think, look, is this something that I really deserve? Or is it something that I'm taking away from another person? Is it some special goodie that I'm getting that other people aren't? Look, we all know that workplaces are rife with people paying very minute attention to what our colleagues are getting and not getting. Who's getting a raise? Who's getting a better parking spot? Who's getting, who got to leave early? It's part of work that we are attentive to these things. And many people with disabilities, even if we know that the accommodations that we're getting are fair, we also know how they're likely to be perceived by our other people in our workplace. We know that people are likely to think, oh, so okay, he gets to leave early, and now I have to do his work. Or I see that he didn't have to come to this meeting, and now other people have to pick up the slack. What I worry is that people with disabilities think, I would just rather, I want to protect my good name. I don't want other people to even think of me as a special pleader, as someone who's trying to game the system. And so sometimes we err on the side of caution by not getting the accommodations we need and maybe even not fully disclosing our disabilities. But again, I think that one aspect of respect is to treat people fairly. And that falls both on disabled people and on employers. I think employers should, whether disabled people are reluctant or not, should give them every opportunity to get the accommodations they need. And also, I think they should take every opportunity to ensure that these accommodations are not seen as unfair special pleading, that they are something that a person is owed and not something that's mere charity. So finally, hey, I'm a philosopher. What do I know about the real world? How to make any of this happen? The smarter people than I am can figure this out. But let me just end by with a few practical suggestions. So what I've been trying to explain here, trying to understand and get clear on in my own mind, is this paradox of why disabled people in the workplace very often do not disclose their disabilities, even though the accommodations that this would entitle us to would actually enhance our employment prospects. And of course, the answer is discrimination, but I've tried to sort of delve more deeply into what might be the underlying causes of that discrimination. It's namely misconceptions about disabled people as burdensome and putting undue costs on employers, misconceptions of disabled people as engaging in special pleading and trying to get goodies for themselves that they don't deserve. What I think we can do about this is to educate employers and employees about the nature of disability accommodations, about why they're provided, and about their connections to justice and equal opportunity. I also think it's important to educate them about notions of solidarity, that very often disabled people are not given opportunities to be part of a team, to help out, to contribute. And the workplace is an important arena for that to take place. Having disabled workers tell their stories, I think would make a lot of progress here. Probably many people without disabilities don't know what it's like to fret about whether to disclose a disability in the application process, to worry that you might be fired if someone finds out about your disability, and to face suspicion and resentment from your colleagues for the accommodations that you provide. So simply having disabled people tell their stories, I think would make significant progress. And then there are even more practical things, like standardizing and streamlining the accommodations process so that it's not so ad hoc and willy-nilly like it is in many places. Hey, I think an obvious thing is a centralized budget for accommodations. How it works now is in many organizations, the costs of accommodations are passed on to particular offices rather than provided from a central place. What this does is it creates then some kinds of resentments where now individual offices are like, well, okay, we have a disabled worker. We have to now find the money out of our budget to pay for that person, which breeds jealousy and resentment. Another important aspect of this is ensuring that the burdens of accommodating disabled people are fairly distributed. I've talked to many people for whom it's always seems to be one person who has to do more work when a disabled person gets to leave early or gets a day off because of a chronic condition. That's not fair, and that ticks people off. So having a system where this is fairly distributed along with the explanations. But finally, the question I started with but haven't answered. Should disabled people disclose their disabilities in the workplace in light of all that I've said? Well, look, I'm a realist. I know the world we live in. I know there are many employers who are simply mainly focused on the bottom line, who see workplace accommodations as really just legal requirements and they're trying to avoid being sued. And they might even deep down question the wisdom of such accommodations. I admit it. The moral appeals that I've been making are unlikely to be convincing to employers of that kind. So as long as employers of this kind exist, then disabled people are just going to continue having to wrestle on a case-by-case basis with whether to fully disclose our disabilities, while also maintaining some hope that we will someday be able to fully reveal ourselves for who we are. Thank you. That's it.
Adam, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for your presentation. I knew it was going to be a great one because last time it was fantastic, which is why I gave you free reign for today. I do want to mention to everybody after this presentation that the price of most accommodations is not a whole lot. It is, and Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, typically under $500 or so. And a lot of the times you can find things for free or a lot cheaper than $500 as well.
Yes.
This is Stephanie. That is correct. And most of the time it's just a rethinking of how the job is done. Doesn't change the duties of the employee, but how the job gets done. That can make it simple. We've had some that cost money. I know your computer screen, Adam, is a big deal and a big screen, but yeah, we've had some $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 accommodations in the past, and those employees have worked beautifully long into till they retire.
Well, I'll just say on that. So it's exactly right. And, but part of this, for me, it's just, and maybe it's just because I'm in a workplace myself. Even, the accommodations that are cheap, it's just so weird, isn't it? That in a workplace, colleagues are just so attuned to these things, just little differences in the kinds of things that people get. So there's still, I mean, I'm just trying to put my finger on like why the numbers are so stubbornly low that for disabled people disclosing their disabilities, given that the unemployment rate is so high for disabled people. And it just hurts my head thinking about it.
This is Stephanie. Hurts my head too. And the reality is 80% or so of that 61 million Americans that have a disability don't look like me, a person who uses a wheelchair, or Joel or John. They look like somebody that doesn't maybe have a limitation that would substantially limit a major life activity. And so I get disclosure. Employees will talk to me sometimes and they're like, well, what do I say on that form if I feel like I need, just a change in the workplace or reasonable accommodation? And I explained to them, you put on there what you are willing to put on there. There's no magic word. You just need to have a condition that perhaps could be benefited by a workplace accommodation. And we just get the ball rolling with your department leadership and HR and me, and we look at the needs and we meet those needs. And I appreciated in your presentation where you said having a central budget or location for accommodation super helpful. That's what the city's done as long as I've been here. So it doesn't really matter which department has a need for a reasonable accommodation. Some departments will just go ahead and get whatever the employee needs. But most of them really enjoy when I say, once we find the accommodation everybody can work with or agree to, I can help you pay for that. Oh, well, then you just pay for that.
Right.
But we're evolving. It's always evolving.
Yeah. And just, part of what, got me going with this is, look, one side of this issue is thinking about what, city government should do, what employers should do, that the employer side. And that's where a lot of the research, a lot of the focus on disability employment is. But I think another central piece of it is looking at it from the perspective of disabled applicants. So I just had had a student recently who has a disability, who like honestly said, "Look, for this computer programming job, I have to take an employment test." And this person has autism, and he said, "Look, do you think I should ask for an accommodation to take this in a quiet room, or is this going to put a target on my back?" And I didn't know what to say to him because from his perspective, he ended up not asking for the accommodation because at least in his mind, he was worried that whatever the employer says, in the back of their mind, they're going to think, oh, okay, that we get it now. We'll go through the motions, but he's going to be at a disadvantage. So working out that dynamic and making it more clear to disabled, it's like maybe a messaging issue that employers are open and welcome for disabled people would make us much more likely to disclose and then therefore much more likely to do a good job.
Well, I had to throw something in. When I worked 20 years ago, when I worked from a startup company to a large corporation, it was pretty clear that I was going to have a hard time being accepted in that particular role. The way I solved the problem, I circumvented it in this way. It said, take me on. I'm an independent consultant because if you're working for a company, they might feel obligated. They have to take care of you. They have to keep you for a certain amount of time. So it's kind of a boomerang. Okay. The good news is there's always reasons why you can't get rid of somebody. That's great. That means you don't want to bring them in because once they're in, you're not going to get rid of them. My solution or my way of circumventing it is I say, look, I'm an independent contractor. I have something to bring to the table that's worth doing. At the point in time that I can't do that, where it seems like I'm flaking out, where I'm not able to make it, then say, hey, it's been a good life. God bless you. You're out of here. And, by making it easy for them to have a exit strategy, if you will, it made it more possible for them to embrace me and bring me in.
So I love that idea, and in fact, one benefit of it is once you show your mettle, then they might want to bring you on. If that's what an employee might want to do.
Right.
On the other side of it, though, and again, so much of this is just people that I know and things. The contractor thing. So okay, I won't give any specifics, but the contractor thing also seems to be a way some employers use to get out of accommodations, like a kind of a path of least resistance. So a
Sure.
friend of mine was applying for, I mean, this applying for a job with one of the military hospitals, federal military hospitals,
Sure.
and he has cerebral palsy and requires a personal attendant. Brilliant guy, does great work, very specialist in whatever area. They said, "Oh well, no, we obviously cannot hire you in this job, but we can hire you as an independent contractor." And now the extra, funding for the personal assistant falls on him. So it's better than nothing. I agree with you. But on the other hand, how ridiculous, right? That these organizations aren't willing to just do the right thing.
Right. It's up to the individual as far as how strong a skill set do you think. I mean, I still have to be like any other employee, selling myself as to what I have to bring to the table that's worth it. So that's still the big point of it. Once
Yeah.
I establish that, now we need to talk about, okay, so what is the best way to, if you have a problem or paranoia or whatever you think you're stuck with me, what are my exit strategies? What do I need to do? And and there may be good things or bad things you're doing, but you have to start. I have something you would want.
Right.
Well, at the breakfast that has been mentioned a couple of times here back in October, the at the time, the chair of Knoxville Area Employment Consortium is Dr. Bob Nicholas. There's been, it's a turnover in November for the executive committee, but I can tell you that he retired from over 30 some odd years in New York, being in the DD Council, Developmental Disabilities Council arena. And he has studied employment for numerous years, and he's written a very interesting report, and it basically makes the business case for hiring people with disabilities. You know, we do have a lot of myths of old that individuals or companies may still subscribe to. You know, oh, it's going to cost me so much money to accommodate that person with a disability, or if I hire somebody with a disability, it's going to make everybody's medical insurance premiums go through the roof, you know, all of these things. Most of those do not come to fruition. Then Dr. Bob Nicholas's report on the business case for hiring people with disabilities is they often find that people with disabilities have more longevity with the employer. They don't come in just to have a job and a paycheck, and then they're always looking for that next job, better paycheck at another company. They get in, they need an accommodation, they get that accommodation, they're doing that job, and they tend to stay and just, you know, accelerate through the company and over the years and maybe the ranks. And I also see many employers out there who've prioritized reaching out to what we may call a minority or a marginalized community. And they want to have people who aren't the standard, what you may think of as an average individual human in this country, because they know customers and fellow employees want to work with and they want to do business with people who look like them, sound like them, and are like them. So I see there's a paradigm shift coming for sure. And if nothing else, you know, we've got a lot of seniors turning 10,000 a day, turning 65 and older, and folks are retiring. Folks are getting some conditions that are limiting their mind or their physical bodies. And so they're going to be moving out of the workforce, and we got to have people to be able to move right into them. So accommodations are reasonable, they're available. And unfortunately, if a private company that has more than 15 employees just doesn't want to fool with it, then there could be some legal ramifications. So, you know, it really pays to have a personnel or an HR department that understands ADA when it comes to employment and fairness and accommodations and things like that. And I think it was Lauren in the chat, she put in there that it was really good that the city has that single budgetary area for employee accommodations, because there are some areas in her workspace that, you know, if somebody needs an accommodation, the department can say, "Oh, sorry, we're broke, we don't have it." But, you know, here at the city, as I mentioned earlier, some of the departments just take care of it out of their own budget. But they always know that that is something that we can do under the ADA budget, so disability services budget. So that's a good thing. We're going to get there. We're going to get that unemployment rate way down, but we all have to work together to do that.
Yeah, you know, and again, I'm a philosopher, so I'll, after this meeting, go back to my ivory tower, you know, uh, which, by the way, you talked about getting stuck into a job. I'm a disabled person, a state employee, and I have tenure. I mean, God, I mean, literally, like I could probably be dead and they would still give me a paycheck.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was thinking like we need both cases for disability employment. We need a business case. I think that's extremely important. I think we also just need a moral case. It's the right thing to do. And maybe an analogy that, you know, people who are in this area might think about is to religious accommodations. So, you know, certainly, like, yeah, you could, you know, try to make a case, you know, obviously you could, that hiring people with certain religious needs makes good business sense. You shouldn't exclude them or whatever. But whether or not it does, like it's just the right thing to do to allow people to, you know, have the Sabbath off if that's part of their religious observances. So anyway, you know, there might be ways for disabled people to sort of reach out to other kinds of accommodations that seems like the general public thinks is perfectly acceptable for businesses to do, and you know, kind of sort of draft off of that.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Curitan or anything else to add?
Yes, I spend a lot of time in adaptive sports.
Oh, very
And part of my adaptation is I'm 82 years old, but I also have other physical limitations. And that we spend a lot of time allowing people without disabilities to participate with our adaptive sports. And that
Ah.
the mountain bike club had its big festival last weekend, and all of our adaptive equipment was there and available. We had rides, we showed everything off, and so I think just exposure, it will have a lot to do with it.
Uh, and I'll just be honest. One of my favorite movies of all time is the documentary Murder Ball. Like I'd never heard of wheelchair rugby, before I saw, and I thought I got to find a place to play this. Like this, this looks amazing. So I think you're exactly right. Sport is such a community building enterprise, and people can sort of you can almost train them about the ideas of accommodations in a fun setting that might seep into. They think, well, hey, this makes perfect sense when we're playing these sports. Maybe it should also make sense for my employees.
And we do all sorts of sports. We do rock climbing, we do kayaking, the mountain biking, and they even have a very large program now in the Smoky Mountain National Park for wheelchair people.
Oh, so I know about that. That is awesome. I'll just say thank you for mentioning rock climbing because that was my sport for a long time because my face was just plastered right next to the wall and I could see just as well as anybody else because really that's all you got to be able to do and a lot of feeling and whatever. So a lot of it is I found when I was growing up, my generation, but maybe it's changing you know, I was sort of treated with kid gloves, not allowed to do dangerous things. Oh,
Yeah,
we can't let him do that because he's gonna get hurt. Now, they were
right.
probably right that I was maybe get hurt a little bit, but I just love the idea that more and more it's like, well, hey, everybody gets to go have fun and do some cool things. And it might be dangerous, but it's dangerous for everybody.
In the state of Tennessee has really come online when it comes to outdoor sport, recreation, tourism being accessible. I mean, Don Tate is the fella's name, who's like over that, and he's got an ADA hat and a construction supervisor type hat. And man, they're putting in adult changing tables. They're putting in adaptive bikes. They're making sure that visitor centers and not clubhouses, but cabins and all of these things in our state park system are accessible. And I tell you, it can really explode the tourism. It's one thing for a person or a family that likes to go out and do outdoor sporting and climbing and biking and recreational activities, but when they go do that and they find that whatever they're having a good time doing for that week or weekend, that their nephew who's a C7 quad and uses a manual chair, he could come and do it. Their neighbor down the street who is blind and uses a white cane, she could come and do it. That is how you build not only economically, but you really build community in that way. 1 in 3 people has an individual with a disability in their family. The statistics are staggering. 27% of the US population has a disability. So everything we do to increase physical access in the environment, improve inclusion in our programmings, whether that's sports or rec or book clubs or going out and doing culinary classes, any of those things, it just simply levels the playing field for everybody across the board.
And I'll just mention one more thing, and then I'll get out of your all's hair to let you do your thing. But I'll say that one of the things that my family does is my father has a side by side four-wheeler thing. So I can't really go on hikes, I found, because I just trip. I mean, just constantly just whatever. But he puts me in this thing, and we drive to the top of Windrock and it's, I mean, for the first time in my life, been able to see these views, out in nature that I otherwise would. So it's not even, things that are intentionally designed for disabled people, but just people doing fun things. We sometimes get to go along for the ride, so to speak. So anyway, hey, it was really great to meet you all, and I'm always happy to come talk to you all whenever I can be of any help. And feel free, Stephanie has my contact information if I can ever help anybody with anything.
Thank you so much,
Mrs.
Adam.
Simmons, Adam, thank you. That was a great presentation.
Hey, appreciate you. Thank you.
Good stuff.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Simmons, do you want to call on our next speaker?
Okay, next speaker. I believe that's going to be Lauren Ziegler.
Hillary Brooks.
Yeah, that's what I meant, Hillary Brooks.
Yeah.
And Brooks, you are muted if you're trying to speak.
Hillary Brooks, you're up.
Simmons, I know that she had joined on a second, I guess, Zoom window, so she may be experiencing issues. If we would like to go to committee reports and then see if she's back with us, then we can go back to her afterwards.
All right, community reports. No
Okay.
community reports?
Committee reports.
Nobody got any committee reports? I know for a fact that Universal Design, we didn't meet, so there's my part.
I sent you information in the chat, Joel, but I'll go ahead and hit on bylaws, membership, and transportation briefly. Bylaws, of course, will not meet until after the MTAS study is complete. However, once we do get to that part, we will need one additional member before they can meet again, because our current members are Kane and Ziegler. And right now it looks like the only place we can have people move over from is transportation. And our transportation members are Brooks, Eldridge, Maxwell, and Simmons. Membership is slated to meet on December 4th. We currently have Matheson, Mall, and Spangler as members. No chair, that will need to be decided at the next meeting. And then our secretary is Spangler. Transportation will meet on December 9th. The only members in attendance at that, or that were able to be in attendance at that meeting, were Brooks and Eldridge this month. And so that meeting was dismissed due to the requirement of having 3 members present in order to hold a meeting. Current members of that are Brooks, Eldridge, Maxwell, and Simmons. Strategic plans. Livability met on November 6th. Only members Kane and Matheson were in attendance, and the meeting was dismissed due to the requirement of having 3 members present. The members of that strategic plan group are Brooks, Kane, Maxwell, Matheson, Mall, and Spangler. The chair is Mall, and we do not have a secretary for it. That will need to be decided at the next meeting that we can. Universal Design meeting was canceled due to the requirement of having 3 members present to hold a meeting. I did hear from Ziegler at 12:06 that she would be unable to attend that day due to an urgent appointment, and so sent out a cancellation notice to the remaining 2 members, Eldridge and Simmons. And that concludes committee and strategic plan reports. Cook?
I was just curious about the membership committee. Do they really need to meet until MTAS study and all has come back?
They probably don't at this point, but since it has been so long since they have met, I would not mind calling them together briefly just to go over some of the absences and such that we've had in the last few months.
Hey, Misha, what about Jessica Villanueva? Is she still around?
No, Villanueva resigned.
Gotcha.
She didn't accept a second term as a member.
Gotcha.
All right.
Looks like
Brooks,
Hillary has her microphone unmuted, so I think we're ready to roll.
I'm so sorry, guys. I had to jump in my car to head somewhere else. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Well, Regis definitely got us off to a good start with sports because I was going to discuss adaptive sports in Knoxville today. And Catalyst Sports is the program that runs the majority of the sports, like Regis was talking about, the mountain biking, the kayaking, and adaptive rock climbing. So it's sports for people with physical disabilities. And I know they do need a lot of volunteers, but it looks like an amazing program. I've been trying to check it out, and unfortunately, I just haven't had some downtime to be able to do that. But you are able to rent what's called a grit wheelchair. So it's a combination of a mountain bike and a wheelchair. And I'm not sure what the reservation list is like, exactly how long you would need to reserve in advance, but it looks like a very inclusive outing. And I think it's amazing that Knoxville is an area that has opportunities like this for people to participate in. And I really just wanted to bring it up to kind of talk about it. I'm not sure how many people were aware of it. I just learned about it maybe last year in a trip to REI and saw some posters. But otherwise, I wasn't really aware of it. So I just kind of wanted to put it out there.
This is Cook. I'm glad you did, Hillary, because that's, I think, part of the problem for myself personally. Oftentimes, maybe I'm just not tuned in as I thought I was, or I hear but didn't sink in on something. And I'll get to the Sunday evening news and I will see something that occurred Friday evening or Saturday. And I'm like, doggone it. I wanted to do that. I wanted to go watch, see how that works, you know. But I think Catalyst has done a really good job in trying to get the word out. I mean, I'm on an email list, and I know anybody that wants to go on an email list for them can get on it. You know, Legacy Parks has a commitment to make more and more of their facilities accessible and inclusive. The city's right now working in Holston River Park, and we Parks and Rec applied for and got a grant to put a new accessible kayak on that river. So we're just rocking and rolling on some of these outdoor spaces and inclusive rec and adaptive outdoor activities. But I have to put a little plug in too for the city's. I'm gonna get you, Regis, in a moment. For the city's dynamic recreation. That is also adaptive rec opportunities, tends to focus more on individuals who may have an intellectual or developmental disability. But they play life-size foosball. That is so much fun. If you've not played that, we should all go and play that. They play pickleball. They get a softball league going every year. So it's all about, you know, and we have also had individuals, yeah, Cheryl's putting in there about the adaptive wheelchair being really cool. It is super cool. And you know, we've even got a number of adaptive chairs and little things you drive over at Safety City so that kiddos who come and learn about pedestrian safety and what the fire alarm sounds like and how we get in and out of the house safely, it's open and inclusive to all kiddos, and we're looking to get some more adaptive equipment over there. So just if if that's your thing, I once was a physical sports player, not so much anymore, but I love to watch and I love to encourage people and sit on the sidelines and cheer them on. So share that information with us so we can share it with others if we're just not happen to be aware of it. And Regis, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but no one's mentioned yet that Patricia Neal does quite an extensive water sports in the water sports weather. And that's really
That's
very
true.
well run with Al, what's his last name?
Al
Forget Al.
K.
K, right.
Yep, the IRC is Patricia Neal's Innovative Recreation Cooperative. So another program here. You know, I played wheelchair basketball in 88, 87, 88. I don't play today because I'm just not an athletic type. That's just the honesty of it. But like I said, I can cheerlead all day long.
Does anyone have any other questions for Brooks before Simmons moves on? All right.
Tell me again where I'm moving on to.
New business and then announcements and public forum, and after that adjournment.
All right, we got any new business? Of course, Cook, by all means.
Well, it's kind of new business, but I wanted to make you guys aware. I don't know that we've shared it with you guys, but if we haven't, we will. The Tennessee Disability Coalition has come out with the latest grade for the state. We didn't get much better from last year, but the report is out. And I always think it's very important to kind of see the issues that they look at and how they rank them, and then to compare it to last year's. And in the near future, I know Misha's working on getting somebody to actually come to the Codi meeting and kind of go over that latest report. But we haven't gotten better than a D yet. So as a state, you know, it just shows us that we've got still a long ways to go. But I'm thankful for that report because it just kind of gives us a baseline to see and to look at and see where things need to be improving.
Anybody else have any new business? Speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, what am I doing now, Misha?
Announcements, and I have two.
But of course you do. By all means, Misha, tell me your announcements.
Well, I wanted to remind everyone, since it is tomorrow, that Knox County Knoxville Knox County Office on Aging will be holding their Aging a Family Affair 2024 event tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. at Rothschild. The cost is $30. For more information, please call the Office of Aging at 865-524-2786. My second announcement is very near and dear to my heart. You all know how invested I am in disability services. You all also, if you know me, know how invested I am in World of Warcraft, which is why I have ran a guild of 1,000 for the past 2 years. There is a movie that came out October 23rd of this year that has both things that I am so passionate about. It is called The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, and it is a movie about a young man with degenerative muscular disease who found community through World of Warcraft. It is available to watch on Netflix. I highly recommend it, but definitely get a tissue out. I cried more than once while watching it. But I hope that you do watch it, and I hope that you love it.
Any announcements on jumping spiders?
I now have 2 of them, and my arachnophobia is getting a little bit better.
There was a movie called Arachnophobia, was there not, with John Goodman in it?
There definitely was. Next up, if nobody else has announcements, would be public forum.
Anybody have any announcements? All right, we're moving on to public forum. Nothing in public forum?
Well, I don't have a public forum, but I want to say it is the month of giving thanks. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for your continued commitment and showing up at meetings and working with us to make the city the best disability and age-friendly city it can possibly be. And Regis, I just love when you join us because you always add something rich to the conversation. And like today, I would have never, ever thought you are 82 years old. So you go, you keep up whatever the beautiful things you are doing. And I hope I look half as good as you do when I'm 82.
Every time I see her, she's out clubbing.
Well,
because that's where you are, Joel.
Yeah, exactly. All the cool kids hang out there. All right. So what am I doing now, Misha?
Adjourning the meeting. We have already dismissed, so I believe all you need to do is adjourn it at 4:15.
All right. If there's nobody else has anything to add, then I'm going to call this meeting at 4:15.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving.
See everybody next month.
Thank you. You too.